Hello, my name is Tristan Rivera, and this is the story of my experiences with cancer, specifically large B cell non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. To help illustrate this story, I'll be using a large collection of Snapchat memories. These were memories from a private story that I had where I was updating all my good friends. A little bit of backstory first. Around this time last year, I was a nursing student as well as a shift leader at Pliables. It was literally right before spring break was beginning, so I was just so dead set on finishing up finals, finishing up clinical. One thing that people always ask me whenever I tell them about my diagnosis is, did you have any symptoms like leading up to your hospitalization? And this is just a question that always kind of gets me because I literally cannot believe I ignored my symptoms for as long as I did. It was at least a month. It had to be at least a month. So the literal earliest symptom that I got, it had to be around September of 2020. I would get these kind of sharp pains in my lungs, like just scattered across, like just probably 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever on each lung. And they would come and go off and on for a few months. So I actually thought I had COVID because it was like a kind of lung pain, you know? So I was hospitalized on March 9th, 2021. The 2 weeks leading up to that, so late February, early March, that's definitely when it got real bad. Like, there was one day I woke up, I was thirsty. So, of course, what are you going to do when you're thirsty? You're going to take a sip of water. I took that sip of water and I literally drowned. Going back to what I said about the lung pain earlier, this made it relatively difficult to fall asleep, let alone stay asleep. So, what I would do often would be take a shower at like 2, 3 a.m. in the morning. Hopefully, either relax me or open up my lungs because I thought I had COVID. But yeah, one of these showers, it was literally 4 in the morning. I almost passed out. There's been a couple instances in the past where I've almost passed out, so I kind of knew the feeling. But this one was pretty significant. I could like hardly dry myself off. Thankfully, I made it to my bed and then just laid down and rested again, and it went away. But I was that's what finally like clicked in my head. Like okay, something's not right here. So the next morning, I called my PCP. I actually ended up having a telehealth appointment with, I think, a PA. So somebody who's never seen me before. I told her all about my symptoms, and she said it was the uncontrolled asthma. She actually prescribed me a corticosteroid inhaler that actually did not do anything, of course, after a few days. But when I was talking to her, I was like, isn't this something that would indicate the need for a chest x-ray? And she was kind of on the fence about it, but ordered it anyway. And then fast forward, I think 2 days, I go down to MDI in downtown Dover and then get the x-ray done. That's when they find this large opacity in my lung. And it's funny, I actually drove myself home right after that scan. Was literally about to crawl back into bed because I'm sure you can imagine around this time I was freaking exhausted. And my mom comes upstairs and she's like, Tris, you gotta go back to MDI. They're ordering a stat CT scan. And at the time I was like, okay. More than anything, I was a little upset because I couldn't get some sleep. I wanted to sleep so bad. Oh my God. So I go back there. I get this stat CT scan. That was my first time getting injected with contrast dye. And then I get back home, chill a bit, and then the PCP actually FaceTimes us for a telehealth appointment. And she explains to us that I have a massive pericardial effusion, which was actually the cause of the cardiac tamponade, which is why I was about to pass out during that shower that one night. My PCP actually, I guess, forwarded my information to Christiana Hospital and made it apparent that this was an emergent case. So when we got there, I actually didn't have to wait very long at all. It was like 5-10 minutes, thankfully. This is a little joke that I was pulling. I played a lot of jokes during this. I'm finally in the ER. Oh, and of course, if anyone wants to read any of these Snapchats, of course you can just pause the video. So they were actually doing scans on me this night. Oh, an ultrasound of my heart, and they, oh my gosh, you should have seen that thing. There was a lot of black space between my heart and my pericardial layer. It was a massive effusion. So they began to talk about doing a 2-in-1 procedure of getting a biopsy of the mass as well as draining this effusion. Here I am finally in the hospital bed. I had oxygen because we believed it would help me breathe a little bit better. But they actually had to put me on NPO status, which is nothing by mouth, for the procedure so that they can get an accurate reading. It was pretty difficult for me since I love drinking water. It was kind of funny. It was like literally 5 in the morning and I was on YouTube like looking up how to make raspberry iced tea because I was so thirsty. Hospital orange juice. I don't know if it's because I needed something to drink back then, but this stuff was so good. I never got tired of it. They drained 400 milliliters from my heart. That's almost as much as an Aquafina water bottle. So imagine all that extra fluid around your heart when your heart is trying to pump and do its job. That's why it was a little difficult to breathe sometimes, and I still thought it was my asthma. This is one of the first iterations of me hearing about the potential of it actually being cancer. I don't think it hit me quite yet still. It's funny because when my PCP had that telehealth call with us, she was like, yeah, there's a 14 by 9 centimeter mass in your mediastinum, as well as a very large pericardial effusion. And my nursing student self was just like, huh, okay. Like taking it like it was a patient assignment or something. This next one, it's the confirmation of it being B-cell non-Hodgkins lymphoma. And of course, that's when I heard about getting chemo. Now, at this point in time, I literally did not know anything about chemo. I literally only knew that it's an infusion of some type and it's for cancer. So I was genuinely curious as to what it would be. I know I said it should be fun, but that's just me, like, I don't know, talking. This next one, yes. My nurses were so nice there. They gave me everything I really wanted, which usually it was just another ice cream or another orange juice. Oh, the hospital food. Some of the hospital food was good. I mean, I think breakfast was probably the best of it. If you have known me before or known me at all lately, I'm a big foodie. So I was actually reviewing the hospital food. This was a care package that my parents brought to the hospital, to the room. My mom was the only one who could visit because of COVID protocols, I think. So my dad actually had to eat his burger alone in the car. Sorry, Dad. This is the first ever bag of chemo I received. You can kind of tell I was apparently a little excited to finally get something going. I guess I was just really prepared to, like, do what I had to do, you know? Here's me about to shave because I still wanted to look nice, I guess. And it came out pretty decent, not gonna lie. The blood thinner that I'm mentioning here, I forget the name, but it was administered every morning in my abdomen because I was so sedentary. I was literally staying in bed for days on end. It's just a small precaution dose so that I don't develop DVTs in my calves. And here is one of the last bags of chemo that I received in the hospital. I was very excited to hear that I was finally almost going home. And finally, I've heard the news that I'm going home in this picture today. I responded pretty well to the first treatment. I think I have the normal saline to thank for that. I was actually on a continuous infusion of normal saline throughout my entire stay. I'm pretty sure it was so that they could help control my high heart rate. Here's just a small soapbox moment I had talking to my friends. Just wanting them to make sure that they pay attention to anything different or odd with their body, because you know your body the best. Nobody else. So if there's anything off, just not do what I did and pay more attention to it. I feel like I had so many hints or like pointers to what was happening, but I just ignored it because I was so busy, or I just wanted to get to spring break just so much. Here's a point in time where it definitely began to hit me more that I was a cancer patient, since I was literally going to a cancer center when the week before that I was on spring break for school. Thankfully, they let me take a break and had me prioritize my health. I mean, I don't know why at the time I was thinking that they would not let me. So around this time now, I'm thinking I have a new mission objective. I have to get through this, you know? Honestly, there was no doubt in my mind that I wouldn't get through it. I remember my mom on March 9th in the ED room. She looked at me and she was telling me, "We're going to get through this. We're going to get through this, Tristan." And it's a little, I guess, funny if you ever hear her tell that story, because she swears on her life that when she said that to me, I had a look on my face like, what do you mean? Of course we will. That's just crazy to me. Like, I wish I could see my face in that moment. This is a picture of a houseplant that I had. It had struggled a bit when I was in the hospital, but my dad nursed it back to health. Look how good that looks. So this one is just mentioning the possibility of how long the cancer has actually been there. My doctor explained it to me as starting with one single cancer cell and then just multiplying for months and months on end until it formed that huge mass in my mediastinum. Here's where it gets a little bit more interesting. So I'm pretty sure a little bit of time before this, I discovered that I was going to have to take way more chemo than I initially anticipated. Coming out of the hospital, I thought it was going to be one bag of chemo for every subsequent treatment. And I was going to have to do like, what is that? Like 6 more bags? Yeah, no. I was hugely mistaken. Every chemo round is approximately 4 to 5 days of a continuous chemo infusion, followed by a 3-week break, and then it's more chemo. So me thinking that it was going to be 1 bag every 3 weeks as opposed to, 4 or 5 bags? Yeah, that's a lot more chemo than I initially thought. But it wasn't too daunting. Again, I knew I had a mission to do, so here's where I discovered that I would be taking the chemo home, and instead of getting it infused for however long it would take at the cancer center, which is, of course, a huge plus. I mean, I was already blessed to have my mom be able to drive me to my appointments, since she's been working from home for like 6 or 7 years, I think now. But yeah, just going up there for, I think it would be like, 30 minutes for me to get my next bag, my next chemo bag, and then I would just be out. That's a huge advantage. Here's what the bag looks like. It's not a Birkin, unfortunately. It's kind of just like a man satchel thingy. And then here's what's inside. The chemo cocktail is strapped in and then connected to the portable IV pump. This is a little realization moment. And no, it actually was not the size of a basketball. I was just exaggerating, but feeling pretty good after cycle 2. In just a second here, we will see what happens. Yeah, so this is a little case of anaphylaxis. This is one of the first cases of my allergic reaction to a medication that they had. It was called Cytoxin. This would happen every Friday at the end of chemo weeks until we figured out a way to not have them happen, which is just infusing the medication at a much slower rate. It was kind of funny because a nurse from a few pods down, that's just, pods means sections, she noticed me having this reaction even though I had my mask on. And it was kind of the funniest thing because I was just chilling there, and in my head I was like, I don't think I'm supposed to be feeling this way, but I'm just gonna chill and not say anything anyway. Which is obviously like something you don't want to do. So somebody finally gets to me and they're like, "Are you okay? Like, are you feeling okay?" And then yeah, right here it says a nurse was asking me questions and I was like, yeah, a little bit. It kind of made her laugh because I was so mild despite having a weird like anaphylactic reaction to something. Continuing the basis of new reactions, here we have a Neulasta patch, not Neulastim. It's a medication that stimulates your bone marrow to make more white blood cells, not to counteract the chemo, but to help your body recover after the chemo and bring up your white blood cell count. Now, this actually posed some interesting problems for me. I believe it was the next day where I felt I had trouble breathing. It really hurt in my lower left lung to inhale. I could hardly inhale, honestly. So they get me a stat CT scan to rule out any blood clots in my lungs. At this point in time, I was just confused. Like, what is that? What is that? It was actually atelectasis. Atelectasis is just a fancy term to describe improper inflation of your alveoli, which are the little sacs in your lungs that are responsible for oxygen diffusion of the body when you breathe. We have millions of them. I actually had atelectasis of that lower left lung or lower left lobe because I had like a left elevation of my diaphragm, which I believe was caused by the thoracic cancer. I guess you can call it thoracic because it's within my thoracic cavity, but the lymphoma kind of made my diaphragm elevate on the left side for whatever reason, which then kind of pushed on my lung, which then creates the atelectasis. And this atelectasis would arise every time I got that Neulasta patch. I think it happened pretty much every single time. I forgot to mention me getting the PICC line in during my hospital stay, but a PICC line is a peripherally inserted centralized catheter, centralized because the tip of the catheter ends in a central vein. So the PICC lines usually end in your superior vena cava, which is one of the largest veins of your body. It's the section right before your heart. So anything I was receiving in that PICC line would go directly to my heart and then be directly pumped to the rest of my body. That's why I said it was kind of metal, because getting chemo through that line and then just having your heart pump chemo for 5 days in a row? Yeah. It was pretty gnarly. Here's a quick little video of my home health nurse replacing the dressing on my PICC line. It felt amazing. Oh my gosh, I loved getting that thing replaced. But she was such a nice lady. She was one of the best people ever. Definitely made the whole thing a lot better.
Wow, that's a nice goal.
Well, actually, my ultimate goal is to leave my children a legacy.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, I would love to leave them lots and lots of money so that they never have to work, that they can work this business. Just take my business that I build and just make it grow.
Yeah.
That's my goal.
And then here is my PICC line site, naked. Honestly, looks pretty good. I never had any issues with it. I know it looks a little gnarly, but that's honestly just what it's going to do. Oh, this one was a big milestone. What this one's talking about is the state of my vocal cords. So we had actually learned that the mass was pushing on my laryngeal nerve, which is responsible for the innervation of my vocal cords. It actually got paralyzed from that mass because it was pushing on it so much, which made my left vocal cord completely just shot. And that's why that one day, ever since then, I had trouble swallowing anything because my vocal cord was not working. Your vocal cords are essentially two doors that block your trachea, which is where you breathe in air. So you can imagine if one of those aren't working, then you run the risk of choking. As far as my voice goes, at this point in time, we didn't know when or if it was even going to come back. As I'm sure you can tell, a year later, it came back very strongly, I'd say. This is pretty much my normal voice for sure. Do, re, mi, fa, so. It's a little bit, I can tell there's a little bit discrepancies in certain tones, but for the most part, I'm chilling now. Here's where my facial hair really began to fall out. It was kind of funny. I used to always shave my head, but pretty much the entire year last year, I didn't have to do that once, which kind of became a nice convenience. I did like shaving, but not every week. So having chemo do that for me was kind of nice. Here, I'm just feeling on top of the world, kind of amazed at how my body looks, even though I've been a cancer patient on chemo for probably several months now at this point. Okay, before we talk about mouth sores, I just wanted to say that I experienced probably every single chemo side effect there was. Neuropathies are not mentioned here at all. Neuropathies were lack of feeling in my fingertips. That pretty much happened. I pretty much had that for the whole entire time. I was on a vitamin B12 complex to help combat that a little bit, and it definitely worked. It definitely slowed down the numbness in my fingertips. So what mouth sores are literally sores in your mouth that develop because chemo targets all of the rapidly growing cells, whether that be your hair, your mucous membranes, or the cancer itself. They had taught me many ways to help combat the mouth sores to even begin. Like, I was on a lot of prophylactic precautions for that. I would gargle baking soda to keep my mouth alkaline and not acidic. Everything I did pretty much was, it did not do anything, unfortunately. Here is Curoxin, a over-the-counter mouth sore treatment that I used to use. It's all natural, tastes very bad, but it would help the mouth sores a little bit. I actually did not like the magic mouthwash they gave me because all that would do, I feel like I was slightly dramatic, but whenever I would take the magic mouthwash, it would just like strip me of feeling like a human, I guess. Like, I was just eating solely for sustenance. I could not feel anything in my mouth when I would take the magic mouthwash. I could not taste anything. It was one of the most unnatural things I've felt. Here's a picture of what it did to my tongue, what the mouth sores could be. It essentially took mold of my teeth, I think, is why it looks like that. So Curoxin was definitely my tool of choice when it came to combating the mouth sores. I pretty much lived off of Premier Protein. I had pretty much every single flavor at the store like possible. The mouth sores would last for at least 3 to 4 days for up to like 6-ish, sometimes even a week, I think. A lot of those times I was just having protein shakes like all day. It was really the only thing that I could stomach because I remember at one point I literally teared up from the pain from drinking water. You really don't realize how much the tissue in your mouth contorts whenever you eat or drink, but the mouth sores will definitely let you know. Now, with this strength increase, of course you can expect the incidence of the side effects to increase as well. This definitely made me a little bit more anxious in terms of what to expect since, it's stronger chemo. This is especially more true when my doctor actually gave me a little bit of a heads up, saying as time goes on, you are kind of expected to feel more fatigue because the 3 weeks you get between each cycle is specifically for your bone marrow to heal, not necessarily the rest of your body. So it was kind of known that I would feel more fatigued over time, but I think I did pretty dang good in terms of combating that or just not giving up, you know? So fast forward a little bit. At this point in time, I'm feeling definitely more seasoned, more experienced. I know what to expect in terms of the entire chemo process, whether that be the appointments I go to or any of the side effects that I'm feeling. Now, with these side effects, I think I can make it a little bit more clear in regards to when they were occurring. So the mouth sores, for example, were actually 1 to 2 weeks after I would finish a chemo infusion. The numbness / neuropathies in my fingertips was actually an ongoing thing, but I wanted to talk a little bit more about the side effects that I would get during an active infusion. I'm sure you can imagine how tired I got during the active chemo weeks. Definitely a different type of tiredness. That's probably putting it rather lightly. To describe it, honestly, it's a different type of tiredness. Like, you've just never been that tired before ever in your life. I remember on Mondays getting the first chemo bag attached to me. I would immediately feel the effects from it. I would immediately just be tired. In addition to being exhausted all the time, this didn't really couple well with not having an appetite. I know it was very key to replenish the nutrients that my body was using up during these chemo weeks, but it was very difficult too. Having no appetite was something new for me. Even my favorite foods and stuff weren't really appealing. A lot of the times I would never know what I wanted to eat. I just never really found or had the urge to eat something. Though there were times where I would have an aha moment and remember a certain food exists or remember that there's a Chick-fil-A down the road from the appointment spot. There were very many quick spur of the moments where I told my mom what I wanted to eat and we went and got it, because for me to even be eating in general was a great thing. Here's a quick little example of that. When I first discovered this place, it was highly rated on Google, and in the moment I was craving pizza, so I went and gave it a shot. Little Anthony saved me many times back in the day. I think I had been there probably 4 or 5 times after chemo days, so naturally they're going to hold a special place in my heart. Even more so when I had discovered inside their store that they made a donation to the cause of lymphoma, as well as my friend Isabel's grandfather owning the place. Isabel was a coworker of mine at Pliables, so when I found that out, that was pretty insane. Definitely a small world. Here's a little clip of me just jamming out in the car.
Chef Curry with the shot, big cooking with the sauce, Chef Curry with the pot, boy. 360 with the wrist, boy.
Again, shout out to my mom for driving me to these appointments. Thankfully, her schedule and the time of the appointments worked out pretty well. And then she actually sniped me in the treatment room. I was on my way to the bathroom.
Look at him doing everything himself. Instead of the nurses. I guess it was beeping already. Huh. Oh, it's going to the bathroom.
This is a screenshot of my activity during June and early July. I'm pretty sure the red circle is activity, but not too shabby for somebody going through a bunch of chemo, if I do say so myself. If I'm not mistaken, that screenshot was actually taken a little bit after my 6th cycle. I was actually originally supposed to only get 6 cycles, but after one of my big scans, a PET scan, we had actually discovered that it spread to a lymph node in my left armpit. Fortunately, that was the only place that it spread to, but of course that's really something that nobody wants to hear. I mean, why is it like moving anywhere else, you know? So I'm pretty sure that's why they gave me 2 additional cycles. But despite that fact, you can tell by this screenshot, I was still pretty hopeful. Not the happiest, of course, but I still remained to have a good mental fortitude. In this next one, we can actually see that they increased the strength again by another 20%, for a final total of 60% from the original dosages I got in the hospital. Fortunately, the spread to my lymph nodes in my armpit wasn't too much of a concern. The value that they use during PET scans to measure how much activity that the cells or cancer has going on is actually the SUV score. And in the lymph node, it was actually 2.4. The max is actually 17. So under 4, or I think under 2 actually, is generally a good sign. So we were remaining hopeful after these next chemo cycles to come. I know some people may not believe me, but this actually was a Gucci gown. An unreleased line, I think, to the public, but they actually hooked me up since I was such a baller. This is one of my favorite pictures. A little realization moment. Completing 8 cycles is gnarly. I think I probably took this one on like 8:13 or something. I'm just gonna let the next clip roll without any context. I rang the bell, or in that case, hit the gong, but definitely a great milestone to achieve. I was very happy to know that I didn't have to do any more chemo, since chemo sucks. It also meant that I was getting a piece of my life back, in a sense. I didn't have to be constrained anymore under the side effects of chemo, so that was a very big thing for me. Oh, here's a clip I took before going to the cancer center to get this final bag detached from me. You can definitely hear the change in my voice. This, I think, was my 40th or 50th total chemo bag that I ever had infused in me, which is a lot. I think that's like 40 or so liters, but yeah, let it roll.
This is the last piece of media I'll ever have with this fucking bag, dude. It was interesting seeing this thing in the hospital for the first time. Because it's like fucking orange Gatorade, bro. It's a chemo fucking cocktail. But that means I get to get this fucking line taken out of me very soon. So that's nice.
This is the last photo I ever took with my PICC line still in. It was getting removed on an emergent basis because I had a little bit of inflammation in my chest. I think it was from my heart, since I literally had 6 months of chemo being diffused through it. It was getting removed within the next few days anyway, so. Dude, me doing this, like, at all was crazy. Like, I never did any of this stuff with it in because I didn't want to run the risk of it like coiling up in my arm or anything. I just didn't want to do anything bad with it, you know? I took very good care of that thing. This is a picture of a shower PICC line sleeve. I actually ordered this the second day after being home from the hospital because the alternative is actually saran wrapping your arm, and it only took me one time doing that to know that I did not want to keep doing it. So this thing definitely came in clutch, but I was happy to throw that thing in the trash afterwards. And then this was, I think, a few days after. The entry hole was already closed. Here is me before one of my final PET scans, pretty much to see if there's any cancer left over from the treatments. Womp womp. Here is me actually finding out about that PET scan. And it looks like the mass actually grew 2 centimeters. The mass in my mediastinum, it grew again. Oh, and my left lung had a nodule on it now. We were not very happy that day. Months and months after getting chemo, just to see the mass growing again, it's just, it was very weird, very weird. I still remained hopeful, for sure. I was just more confused than anything as to why the chemo did not fully work. So I'm pretty sure I talked to my doctor at this point. We talked about immunotherapy, and the point in this time in this Snapchat, I didn't know at all what that was, but fast forward 3 to 4 months after that last Snapchat, and you'll get this one. So this was definitely a huge milestone in itself, of course. Easily my best scan ever. I remember back in the day, pretty much every PET scan had some kind of bad news attached to it, but this CT scan right here was like a godsend. The tumor has shrunk to 2.2 by 5.8 centimeters. That's the smallest it's ever been. No pericardial effusions or anything. My organs are looking good. My lungs are clear, and the left lung nodule had actually disappeared. It's looking up. It's looking up for sure. It's been looking up, I should say. And then here is my 7th immunotherapy that I've actually completed. I believe this was probably literally last week. The current treatment plan is to stay on immunotherapy for as long as I would need to. I actually haven't told many people this, but the maximum length of an immunotherapy regimen can actually be 2 years, but it all depends on the person and how everything responds. So yeah, right now we're just riding out this immunotherapy wave, and honestly, so far so good. Lastly, I just wanted to share a bunch of memories I had this past year, ones that I actually enjoyed. Definitely moments that helped me de-stress, decompress. Cooking has been one of my passions for, honestly, as long as I can remember. But this past year, it's been a positive coping mechanism I tapped into very often. Actually, so often that I ended up making a little pizza side business. I call it Tristano's. I actually Googled pizza by Tristan and translated it to Italian, and it said pizza di Tristano. So I kind of rolled with it, but all of my friends and my family allowed me to pretty much create that from the ground up. Seeing the support from back in the day up until now, it has been truly surreal. Like, I have an infinite amount of appreciation for all of you, seriously. If it's one thing I've learned, it's that I have some of the best support systems that honestly anybody could ever ask for. Whether you're a friend or a family member, thank you. Seriously. I cannot say thank you enough to you guys. With that being said, feel free to hit me up if you guys need literally anything. Leave a comment down below and subscribe. It's like, I don't want to say that quite yet. I just feel like a classic YouTuber. But thank you guys so much for literally everything. making it to the end of this long movie of a video, thank you. Thanks for being you.